the registration applications, which is used by customers to buy a registration and admin to essentially register a new registration plate. I will first show you by demonstrating the app, and then I will talk about the code. So this is my login page, and the way the login is used is that it's a higher order component, and if you try to go into different pages, it will just throw you into to the login page essentially. I've used a protected route for that. I'll show you later for that. You can see that I've tried to look for a res plate, and it'll just send me straight to login. So first I will show you the functionality of a customer to view and buy a registration plate. So I've laid out the information here just in case you wanted to go through the app yourself. 1, 2, 3. I don't know if I've put that one correctly. Let me just see. Password 2, 1, 2, 3. Okay. You can see that login is successful, so I'll just check for it. You can see that there is partial checks, and this is all done on the server side essentially, and the pagination is done on the server side as well, I think. So I'll just go with this one. You can see that it costs 51.81. See if we can buy this plate, for instance. So this is the current balance I've got. If, for instance, you don't have enough money yourself in the account, you'll not be able to purchase. For instance, if I go back and if I try again to buy some form of expensive plate, for instance, you can see that it gives you the insufficient balance. I'll go back, and I will buy the first. I'll buy the plate that I first picked. So you can see that I've purchased successfully, and you can see that these are all of my different plates that I bought. You can see that if I go back now, the available is false because I have bought the registration plate. And if you go to the balance page as well, you can see that the price has been deducted from my account. And I think that's it for the customer side. I'll log out. Now I'll log in as an admin. So we again got the same input field as customers, but there is a little difference, I suppose. You can see that it's not just view, but it's also that there's also an update field. So I'll go into one of those, for instance, and I'll just update one of these ones. So what I'll do is I'll change the price of it, for instance. Note the number plate, so it's CY80QAZ. So I'll change that to 60, for instance. Update. You can see that I've updated the price of the number plate. So as an admin, I'm also going to register a new plate. So I can either register according to regions. So I'll just select a tag CE24, and the input themselves have got checks as well. For instance, you can't pick so only letters are allowed in this field, so I can't do anything. So I'll just pick a letter, and if I go back, for instance, and this one, only numbers are allowed in that field, so I'll go back and change to 24 and pick a suitable one. You can also create a standard and customer plate at the same time. So you can only do one at a time. I will make a custom plate later. So you can see that I've just created a new number plate. I could go to home, and you can see that this was the one that I've created. So go back, I'll register a new number plate. This time I'll use a custom plate, for instance. So if I try and put an inappropriate plate, for instance, you can see that I get an error message saying that it contains a restricted or inappropriate content. So I'll just go back and be more sensible. Price, and I will make them, I think, £10,000, something like that. Register. And I've also got a transaction. You can see that I've registered successfully. I can also go and see a transaction that's been made. All of the new information, so I can see. So I think that was the latest one that was bought by the customer, and that concludes the demonstration of the registration app. And so first, to talk about the client-side app, I have built the client-side app on React. And the web service I've used is essentially I've used Node.express.js to serve the app. This is the server JS file, which looks for the index, index.html on. So that's the root of the React app, essentially. So it looks for this, and then it serves everything. You can see that here as well. So that's the static page that's been served, and that's all of the CSS that's been bundled, and that's all of the JavaScript that's been bundled. This will be sent to the browser, right? So talking about the code itself, so I've got. So firstly, I think I'll talk about the main files itself. I have used for the client side. I have used I've used React Router for browsing. I've also used for the CSS. I've used custom CSS, and I've also used Bootstrap. And I've also used higher order components like auth context, auth provider, essentially for logging in. And that's kind of the effect that you saw when I was trying to get to a different route, but it threw me back to the login page. On my app.jsx, so I've called all of the different components, such as navbar, routes, and different pages here. And so depending on the roles of the customers, when they've logged in, they are able to access different pages, as you saw. And that's the use. So that's the login hook. Essentially, I've created. So I will talk about. I'll talk from top to bottom, and then I'll tell you what each directory is doing. API has got some tests, but mostly it's to do with how. So this directory handles how API call is being made from the front end to the back end. Auth API is to do with logging in with KeyClock, because that's what I've used to generate the tokens. Axios instance, so this is the main file, essentially making the API call to the backend using Ajax. I've used Axios, which is a default Ajax implementation in React. I've also used token when logging in, and also refresh token as well, which will be sent in. The access to token will be sent in the headers when making requests. Otherwise, it will just give you 401 unauthorized error. And these are just the different API that I've used, essentially, that uses Axios instance that I've created here, and then it sends different REST requests, which includes get and patch. And again, this one was for refresh auth token again, which used KeyCloak for that. More API requests being made. That's for transactions. This is for user, and this is for vehicle plates. So that's what the API directory does. It handles the request being made to the backend. Assets, it's just all different CSS. And the components is the reusable components that I've used throughout the app, one of which is an app bar here. And there's region drop. So yeah, these are all kind of like the different components, reusable components that I've used, of which some of the main ones I would say is the plate form and the plate form card, which are kind of the fundamentals, I suppose, of the app, because I've used the same form for viewing, for updating, and for registering a new number plate. Protect route. So this is the route that protects the different routes, and if the user doesn't contain a certain role that's been specified as a parameter, it will just throw the user back to the login page. This was the component that was used for that. Constants, I think this one was just error messages. Auth context, I think that's quite important as well. This is the one that this is the component I've used essentially for logging in, checking any access tokens, clearing sessions, and logging out. So anything to do with authentication is within this component, and that's been shared throughout the app as well. The data is just the raw data that I've used. This one contains bandwidths. This was the different front tag, the two first tags that's used for number plates. I've also implemented the GraphQL here. So this is one of the queries that was used. Get username. Again, I just wanted to see how GraphQL and REST differed. And of course, with GraphQL, everything, the different queries and the different fields are being controlled in the front end rather than the back end, and GraphQL only uses a single endpoint, API endpoint, to essentially do all of the different queries and mutations. Hooks. So this one was quite important as well. I've created a custom hook essentially to handle, because I'm using the same component to view as well as update, as well as create registration plates. I had to use a custom hook to handle um, how these different functionality will be handled, and that's what useplate does essentially, depending on which page you are in. And within the pages as well. So these are the different pages that you will have seen within the app. Some of which are balanced page. Then we've got the edit plate page. You can see that that's created. That's used plate form. And we can see for the registration as well, we use the same plate form. You can see how the components are being reused essentially. And I've used Dockerfile to run the app itself. And I think that's pretty much it on the front end side. Next, I'll talk about the back end. One thing I forgot to mention is that my application does follow a model view controller architecture, where the model is allocated to the React app and the view is allocated to the React app, and model and controller is allocated to the server side, which is created on Java using Spring Boot framework. So my application follows a typical Spring Boot framework project structure. We've got the main application that runs, main file that runs. The model essentially has got a link to the database using Hibernate. So I've got 4 entities essentially, for one for balance, transactions of new transactions that's been happening. User, I've used the same class for both admin and customers. They are being separated by the user role enum. Within enum itself is customer and admin. Then of course I've got the vehicle plate entity. The repositories, and I've also created a repository directory for them, which is essentially which extends JP repository and allows me to use all of the different methods that's present within the app. And the repository also contains custom queries that are made within the app. For instance, I've used paginations on the server side, and I had to create that here. Then I've got the server side, which essentially handles the business logic that calls upon the methods within the repository and sends data as a DTO. I have mostly used DTO on the front on for request as well as sending data. Again, this is mostly a security choice. As I thought, returning something. So, for instance, in the controller, you get a balanced DTO return. Instead of returning the entity itself, I thought it would be better, or it would be a more secure choice to use the DTO instead. So the controller itself exposes the API that are going to be used, and also the controller is responsible for sending the request back. For balance controller, I've got get mapping and patch mapping. So these are all the different directories I've got. I've got controller, I've got DTO, model, repository. I've also got a security directory, which essentially configures and centralizes all the security features here for authentication. I've got all the different methods and the different roles that are able to have access to the different methods essentially. I've also got a validator directory, which is essentially used to prevent any ban words. So if a user were to input inappropriate words, it would prevent you from registering it essentially. Within the resources, I've got GraphQL schema. Again, this was an alternative to use in REST. Again, we've got the user type, and then we've got the query user by username. But how it's being returned will be determined on the front end rather than the back end, which is quite interesting. Application properties. Here's the bandwidth, and this is the SQL databases that I've used. For my database, I've used Postgres for the database. I've also got a Docker file and Docker Compose file. I would recommend you to run the app through the Docker rather than the application itself, because I have already set up Postgres within the Docker, and I've also set up Keycloak with the information that's already required, rather than you recreating the whole username and the whole users within Keycloak, which is this is the file that has all the different users and that have different roles, and I've also got different tests for controller, service, and validator, and I think that's about it.